The Leeward Islands, a string of jewels in the crown of the British Empire, lush, fertile, and profitable. It was here in Antigua that Colonel Daniel Parke, a man of ambition and swagger, arrived to take up his post as governor in 1706. He was no stranger to the Americas, having served under the Duke of Marlborough. He had tasted victory in the Old World. Now he was eager to stamp his authority on the new. The planters, wealthy from sugarcane in Antigua, expected a leader who understood their world. They got something far different. Parke was a man of appetites. He craved power, wealth, and the pleasures that came with both. The islands, used to a certain decorum, found themselves with a governor who seemed to revel in excess. Stories of his lavish parties and extravagant lifestyle began to circulate. The whispers started subtly. They hinted at a man who thought himself above the law, a man who saw the islands as his personal fiefdom. The planters in Antigua, initially willing to overlook his eccentricities, found their patience wearing thin. Parke's style of governance was erratic and often brutal. He seemed more interested in enriching himself than in the welfare of the islands. The stage was set for a confrontation. The seeds of discontent had been sown. It was only a matter of time before they bore bitter fruit. The whispers grew louder. They spoke of indiscretions, of liaisons that crossed the lines of propriety. Governor Parke, it seemed, had developed a taste for the wives and daughters of the planters. These were not fleeting affairs conducted in the shadows. Parke, brazen and reckless, seemed to flaunt his conquests. The planters, bound by codes of honor and loyalty, seethed with resentment. Their homes, once their sanctuaries, now felt tainted by the governor's presence. The very air seemed thick with betrayal. Parke, oblivious or simply unconcerned, continued his reckless pursuit of pleasure. He failed to see the storm gathering on the horizon. The stories multiplied, each more scandalous than the last. There were whispers of forced affections, of women coerced into submitting to the governor's advances. The planters, their anger growing, began to meet in secret. They shared their grievances, their fears, and their growing determination to rid themselves of this tyrant who had invaded their homes and their lives. Among the planters, none felt the sting of betrayal more keenly than Edward Chester. His wife, a woman of renowned beauty and grace, had become the governor's latest conquest. The affair was no secret. Parke, with his usual lack of discretion, seemed to take delight in parading his conquest. Chester, a man of considerable influence, was humiliated. He watched as his wife, his life partner, withered under the weight of the governor's attentions. The birth of Lucy Chester Parke, a constant reminder of his wife's infidelity, only deepened his rage. He swore revenge. He would see Parke destroyed. Chester was not a man to be trifled with. He used his wealth and influence to rally the other planters. He became the focal point of their discontent, the embodiment of their collective anger. The stage was set for a confrontation. Chester, fueled by vengeance, would see to it that the governor paid for his sins. The tension, simmering for months, finally boiled over on December 7th, 1710. It began with a murmur, a ripple of discontent that spread through the streets of St. John's like wildfire. Word spread that the governor was holed up in the government house, his arrogance undiminished. A crowd began to gather, small at first, but growing rapidly as the sun climbed higher in the sky. The Antigua sugar planters, their faces grim, arrived from their estates armed with whatever weapons they could muster. The air crackled with anticipation. This was no longer just about stolen wives and daughters. It was about power, about who ruled these islands. The crowd swelled, a tide of humanity fueled by rum and resentment. They surged towards Government House, their chants of "Parke must go" echoing through the narrow streets of St. John's. The governor, alerted to the unrest, barricaded himself inside, his bravado finally faltering. He had misjudged the depth of the planters' anger. He had pushed them too far. Storming the governor's residence, the crowd reached Government House, a symbol of British authority, and descended upon it like a raging torrent. They battered down the gates, their cries for vengeance shaking the very foundations of the building. Parke, trapped inside, must have felt the walls closing in. His world, built on power and arrogance, was crumbling around him. The planters, their bloodlust stoked by years of accumulated grievances, surged into the building. They ransacked the rooms, destroying anything of value. They were looking for Parke, and they would not be denied their revenge. The governor, his escape cut off, found himself cornered. He had nowhere left to run. The mob, their eyes burning with hatred, closed in. One can only imagine the terror that must have gripped him in these final moments. The governor's demise. Parke, his face contorted in fear, met his end at the hands of the enraged mob. They fell upon him with a fury that was both terrifying and cathartic. He was beaten, stabbed, and left for dead in the streets of St. John's, his body a testament to the depths of the planters' rage. The crowd, their thirst for vengeance finally slaked, melted away into the night. They left behind a scene of utter devastation. The governor's residence, once a symbol of British power, burned down, lay in ruins. The air, thick with the smell of blood and rum, echoed with the dying groans of the governor. Parke's death was brutal, but it was not unexpected. He had sown the seeds of his own destruction. He had underestimated the fury of the planters, their deep-seated sense of honor and justice. The price of power. The killing of Governor Parke sent shockwaves across the British Empire. It was a stark reminder that even in the farthest reaches of the colonies, power was a fickle mistress. The events in Antigua served as a warning to those who would abuse their authority. The colonists, though geographically distant, were not afraid to rise up against tyranny. News of the insurrection reached London, where it was met with a mixture of horror and disbelief. The image of a British governor murdered by his own people was deeply unsettling. It challenged the very notion of colonial rule. The reaction in London was swift and decisive. Troops were dispatched to restore order, and a new governor was appointed. But the damage had been done. The events in Antigua had exposed the fragility of British rule in the colonies. Echoes of rebellion. The Antigua insurrection, though often overlooked in the grand narrative of colonial history, stands as a significant event. It was a precursor to the revolutions that would later sweep across the Americas. It demonstrated that the colonists, when pushed too far, were willing to take up arms against their oppressors. The events of December 7, 1710 serve as a reminder that the road to revolution is often paved with the bodies of tyrants. Daniel Parke, in his arrogance and cruelty, became a martyr for the cause of colonial resistance. The echoes of the Antigua insurrection can be heard in the declarations of independence, the cries for liberty that would later ring out across the colonies. It was a small rebellion, but it cast a long shadow. The legacy of Daniel Parke. Daniel Parke, the once mighty governor of the Leeward Islands, is now largely forgotten. His name, when remembered at all, is synonymous with tyranny and excess. He serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that power, unchecked by morality or compassion, is a dangerous thing. The legacy of the Antigua insurrection is more enduring. It stands as a testament to the human spirit, its capacity for both good and evil. It is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the flame of liberty can never be truly extinguished. The story of Daniel Parke is a tragedy, a tale of ambition, corruption, and ultimately redemption. It is a story that continues to resonate today, reminding us that the fight for freedom is never truly over.